Today I'm going to walk you guys through how to paint chrome, plastic chrome parts, whether you're going to custom paint them or you're going to body color them to the vehicle. This will apply for anything that's plastic chrome, metal chrome, any of that stuff. So I'm going over this because it seems like I am the only one in my area that can comprehend how to do this and how to do this correctly without the paint peeling off, chipping off, and actually lasting for a very long time. Obviously, rock chips, any debris that you hit in the roadway, it's gonna chip the paint. If it's sharp enough, you're going fast enough, it's gonna chip it. There's no way around that. So don't get it confused like this is not bulletproof. This is still going to be something that will last very, very long as you take care of it. Besides like stuff in the roadway like rock chips, any debris that's really sharp, hard, anything like that could chip regular paint, it's still going to chip it, but it's not going to peel on you. It's not going to delaminate. You don't have to worry about any of those issues. Now, a lot of people that I know that have been doing this, or know people that have been doing this, the way they go about this, it's just a nightmare. Their process is way too much work. It's a lot more work than what I'm going to show you guys here than what you actually need to do. And I get why they do it, and their way does work, but it's a lot of work. And if you don't have the tools to do it that way, it's a nightmare to do it that way, and it just takes forever. And that way is a lot of people will take these parts and they will blast them and pit them, and they just especially the plastics. Anything plastic, blasting them will destroy it. And you have to sit there and sand it down so much that you got to prime it, sand it, prime it, and sand it again just to get it back to where it's going to be smooth enough for paint. And you're not going to see any perfections. And that just takes forever. Like I said, I get why they do that. If you're one of those people, I get why you're doing that. But that is just way, way, way too much work. So I'm going to dumb it down for you. This way, if you do see this video, comment down below and try it this way and see if you like this way better than what you're originally doing. This is still a lot of work, don't get it wrong. It does take time to do it this way, but it's going to be a little bit quicker, I think, and a lot less headache for people that are actually blasting these parts just to get them to where primer will stick to them. So the first thing I do before I do anything, after I tear everything down, if I'm doing it or the customer doing it, the customer tore all this down for me, so I just had to take the parts and start working on them. So the first thing I do before I do anything, before I touch it with sandpaper, anything, any type of chemical, I will take these and I will clean the crap out of them, because most of this stuff, especially this chrome stuff, a lot of these are coming from brand new cars, like factory vehicles. And what does dealerships do to factory vehicles before they sell it? They spray a bunch of chemicals on it to clean them, to make them look shiny. You don't know if they're body shop friendly or not. And it just, if you would go and just sand these and clean them and paint them, you would have a ton of chemical reactions to them. So the first thing I do is I clean the crap out of these parts, and I clean them with lacquer thinner. That is the major thing between making this stuff clean and just getting it somewhat clean, is lacquer thinner. Lacquer thinner to me is the best thing you can clean anything with before you start prepping it. I don't care what it is the best thing to clean anything with. Glass cleaner is the second. I use glass cleaner on everything pretty much. Blend panels, things like that. But this chrome stuff, lacquer thin the crap out of it to clean it. And then you can go back over it and clean it if you need to with glass cleaner. But that lacquer thinner will get hot and it will take off any type of greases, waxes, oils from your fingers, you know, any type of solvents from any type of cleaners somebody might have used on them. So clean, clean, clean. I can't express this enough. You have to clean these parts, not just once, twice, possibly 3 times. Clean them until you think, you know that they're extremely clean, because that's the difference between this and blasting them. Is blasting them, it will take all that stuff off, right? You're taking the top layer off of the whatever, the coating, and you're just taking that completely off. You're stripping it, like here say. So lacquer thinner will actually remove all that stuff. It's the method to remove all that stuff, let's say, in order to prep it and get it extremely clean. So if you don't, you will have issues. I will say this again: if you do not lacquer thin your parts before you prep them, you will have issues with paint, not only probably adhering, but you will have issues with paint and chemical reactions for this stuff. And I can't stress that enough, because I've tried to explain this to local guys, and they'll do it, but they won't do the cleaning part, and they'll just start taking sandpaper to everything and start, then they'll want to come and complain at me because their stuff is fisheyeing or their paint's not actually adhering correctly. Yeah, because you have that waxy layer in between still. Sandpaper is not going to really take that waxy layer off. It's going to probably destroy your sandpaper for one. It'll be hard to sand it. This stuff is already hard to sand to begin with because it's so shiny and smooth. So lacquer thin, lacquer thin, lacquer thin, everything. Get a rag. What I do is I get a rag and I'll soak the rag in thinner, and I'll just go to town wiping everything, and I'll do like a lap. If I have a bunch of parts I got to do, I'll start at one end, lacquer thin it, and by the time I come back, that lacquer thin evaporated off. I'll get a new rag, lacquer thin it again, go back, and hit them again. And once that is done and evaporated, you are now ready to move on to the sanding part. So I'm going to show you guys what this stuff looks like after you sand it. It's not really rough, it's still smooth, but you can see the etch in it from the sandpaper. So again, I'm going to explain this once to where you guys understand it. You have to sand this stuff really extremely hard. Taking it by your hand and just scuffing it with your hand is not going to work. You can't just take a Scotch-Brite, you can't just scuff them. You have to take, a really, really heavy grit on a DA and sand the crap out of these without a backing pad. That's the way I found out that works the best. Because if you have a backing pad, you could do it with the backing pad, but it takes forever, and what it does is it just doesn't eat into it as well, because you get that soft cushion between the paper and the DA. You need that hard back to it. So I use, on these I use a 120 grit because I didn't have any 80 grit laying next to me. I always have done it 80 grit. I've done it up to 150 grit and been all right, because those are abrasive enough to where they're going to etch the plastic or metal, like you guys, even the plastics, you can see they scuff them and sand them good enough to where you don't have to worry about if you sanded it well or not. So you have to take a really heavy grit sandpaper. 320 is not good enough. 400 is not good enough. 220 is not good enough. 180, I haven't done it with 180, but I've always done at least 150 and below, and 80 grit. 36 grit, I have not done it with that. Those usually come on a sanding disc, and it will just eat into the plastics usually, so you don't want to do that. You want to try to keep them smooth, but yet really, really scuffed up. Almost like you're just finishing body work and you want to take a DA across your body work to smooth it out. That's kind of what you're doing here. And you have to do it this way. You just have to do it. If you do not prep them and sand them well enough, you will have probably issues with it sticking, um, just because it's part of the process. So now we've got the cleaning part out of the way, and we've got the sanding part out of the way. What's the next step after you sand them? You have to go back to step one, which is lacquer thin them. You have to lacquer thin the crap out of them, because what you have done, even though you've cleaned them once already, you need to go back, because when you sanded all this stuff, you've pretty much knocked off that top layer, kind of, and you expose that next layer. If you know anything about chrome parts and aluminum parts, aluminum is very, very dirty once you start sanding on it. It's almost like you can't get rid of it. So what you need to do is clean them, lacquer thin them again. So, and do it like multiple times again, not just once. The way I kind of judge this, whether I'm done cleaning them or not, is I will, clean them once and then look at your paper towel or whatever you're using to clean them with, and look how black it is. That your towel is going to be black because you're taking all that layer, all that dust and all that stuff from the aluminum and all the plastics off. And then I'll take a new rag again, just like I did in step one, and clean them again. And I'll look at the rag and see how much black has came off of it. If I'm still getting black off of it, I'll do it again. I'll clean it again until it's very, very, very minimal. You want to try to get all that crap off of it. And once all that has evaporated, you want to let it sit, because you just cleaned everything. Lacquer thinner does evaporate very, very fast, but you want to you just cleaned them multiple times again with a lot of lacquer thinner. So you want to let them kind of just exhaust and kind of gas out and just evaporate off the surfaces. And once that has been done, you want to take wax and grease remover and clean them like you would a regular paint job right before you get done, after you get done, right before you get to the painting part, right? So you want to lacquer thin them and then wax and grease them. Wax and grease is just going to kill any extra oils from your hands or anything like that. You might still get some debris and stuff off of these parts because, like I said, they're very extremely hard to get clean. So that wax and grease will be like the last step. And you can do this twice. You can do it however many times you want. I do it at least a couple times. I'll run through. It takes seconds. It doesn't take that long to clean them with wax and grease. Wax and grease evaporates really quick, and once that evaporates, you are now ready for the next process. And the next process is you're starting to get into the painting part. So, one of the major things that separates this apart from anything else is this next product that I use. This is a product that anybody, if you're doing restoration work, you're going to use this all the time. You should be using it. If you're doing any of that type of work, or you're dealing with bare metal, bare steel, aluminum, whatever it is, bare plastics, you're using this all the time. And that is epoxy. This is what I'm using now is a 4-to-1 epoxy. I do reduce a little bit to get it to spread a little bit smoother, so it's not as thick. But if you do have a bigger tip, you can use, I think this is like a 1/8, on these 3M guns. If you have like a 1 or 2.0 or whatever, maybe this is a 1/6. I can't remember what these red caps are. It's a big tip, but it's not big enough. Let's just put it that way. So if you have a bigger tip gun, you can spray 4-to-1 just fine out of it the way it is. It is thick. That's kind of what you want with this stuff. You want to be not thin, but you want to be thick to where it'll come out and it'll lay smooth for you. You don't want it to be really textury. The more texture you put into it, the more work you're creating for yourself after this process. Let's just put it that way, because you're going to end up putting at least 2 coats of this stuff on. If you worked with epoxy before, you understand what it is, and you understand now what you're trying to do to these parts. Epoxy is like the only pretty much primer out there that will actually stick to anything. I'm being serious. Like, it sticks to glass. I've tested it. It'll stick to pretty much anything out there. Um, and if you've been watching my videos, I use a lot of House of Colors stuff. Their primer and sealer KD system does have a little bit of epoxy in it. It's like epoxy, like hybrid is what they call it, I think. But this is not what that is. This is a different epoxy I had laying around from BASF. So I'm using this because I have it laying around from other jobs that I've had in the past, and it works really, really well. You don't want to use like the spray can version of epoxy. You don't want to use anything that's not a two-part, with a hardener system. You want to use something that's really, really, really good. And there's many brands out there that have really good epoxies. You don't have to like stick to just one, but this is just one I have laying around, or else I'd be using the House of Colors stuff. This stuff will stick almost like to anything that's not even prepped, really. So it's really awesome stuff. This is what will set you apart from everybody else doing this, whether you're body coloring or anything of these parts. I've just had really good luck with it without going through the nightmare process of like blasting them and primering them and going that route. So at least two coats of this stuff, let them flash off. Obviously so I'm going to end up baking these parts after I'm done. And yeah, so 2 coats of this, let them flash off in between. If you've worked with epoxy before, you know that this stuff takes a long time to actually dry, because after this step, you're going to have to sand everything down. You're going to sand it, or you really could just scuff it. Depending on how smooth you can get this stuff to lay down, depending on how much sanding you're going to have to do afterwards. So what I do is I can get this stuff to lay down slick enough to where it's like sealer. That way, all I have to do is take 500 grit sandpaper, or like I have scuff pads that are 500 grit, and I'll take a sponge, 500 sponge, and I'll just go over everything, and I'll just kind of scuff up that surface. And if I find any dirt, I just sand that stuff down with, 600 or whatever, 400. Because that's pretty much your primer base is this stuff. This stuff is going to act like your primer because it is primer. So you need to let them dry enough. And this is going to really depend on what type of epoxy primer you're going to use. Multiple companies have different TDS times and dry times and things like that. So you want to look at your TDS sheets. This stuff, it says 24 or 48 hours if you bake it. I've been usually having good luck 24 hours after I bake it, with going back in and sanding it. Because epoxy, if you've never epoxy before, epoxy, you can literally let it sit outside for a week and it will still look like it's wet. It's like gummy. It's really hard to explain, but it looks like it doesn't actually dry. And it may not all the way dry. It might just stay that kind of weird state of like, I'm not really sure about the chemical process of it all, but to me, it looks like it's still wet after a very long time. So a lot of guys will primer something, especially like I said, if you're doing restoration work and you're blasting a whole car. This is the stuff that they'll put on after they get it back from the blaster. Sometimes the blasters put it on for them before they ship the car back to the shop. This stuff will be sitting on a car after it gets blasted. It's bare metal. They'll clean it, put this on there really, really thick, and then the car can sit literally outside without rusting, right? This stuff is like, it's almost bulletproof. And then you might see like they do like their body work on top of it. They'll sand the spots down and they'll do the body work over top of this stuff. This is like the protective barrier between the bare metal and the bodywork stage, because this stuff is so good that it will stick to pretty much anything. It's, it has a lot of rust characteristics in it, so it's really good at preventing rust. So it's just all around really good stuff. I've never had any issues with it. As long as you buy a good brand. But like I said, look at the TDS sheets. Make sure you guys are doing the proper flash times, the proper coats that they want you to do, and the proper steps, because that's gonna matter. But this stuff, I'll have this stuff baked and I'll let it sit, like I said, about 24 hours in the shop, not really outside or anything like that. And I'll kind of test it, and I'll take a little bit of sandpaper to it and see if it's going to be sandable or not. Because this stuff, like this brand, I mean, it stays like shiny. Like you can let it sit for a week and it still looks shiny, like it's wet. So it does stay a little bit more gummy, but it is, once you start sanding it, it'll kind of go away. So it's just really weird. If you've never worked with epoxy before, just understand that it takes a long time to dry. Like this is not going to be something you're going to be able to get back on it in a couple hours. So you want to judge your time to where you have enough time to do this and do it right. Because if you don't and you rush it, I've seen guys do it and they put this epoxy on and they're like, oh, I've got it smooth enough, I'll go ahead and put my sealer right on top of it. If you're using a paint brand's epoxy and they recommend you to sand it before you top coat it, you will have issues. It will peel. It will not adhere. So you need to, like I said, make sure you read your TDS sheets. Like it matters. Or else you're going to screw yourself, because if you do it that way and it starts peeling, you're going to have a nightmare. And don't come running back to me, because you guys need to understand that you have to do this stuff correctly. You have to understand the chemicals you're using and what the manufacturers want you to do in order to do it right for it to actually work the way it needs to work. So once you are to that stage and you're ready to sand it, you can go ahead and sand it. Like I said, 500 is usually, I mean, you take 320 to it, depending on what you're doing, because you don't really want to burn through it. That's the whole point, is like trying to lay it down as slick as you can without getting a lot of dirt and stuff in it, because it saves you time, and you want to make sure this stuff is left on it, but you're still scuffing it down to where it's actually got a mechanical scratch in it, to where your sealer is going to actually stick to it. And that's the next step. So once you get it sanded, you are ready for the paint process. And when I say the paint process, I mean it from the book. Like, you have to do it by the book. There is no skipping a step. You have to seal your shit. I don't care what you've done in the past. I don't care if you primer stuff, you get it slick enough and you can just go right to base coat. You have to primer this, or you have to seal this primer. There are multiple reasons why you have to seal this stuff. It's not like anything else. You just have to seal it. One, if you're doing body color stuff, your sealer acts as a value shade. That's one reason why. So if you're trying to body color something to match a vehicle, you're wanting that true value shade of that color put down. That way you don't have any issues with the color match. And also, it is a adhesion characteristic for your base coat. Your sealer has, like, the best way it's been explained to me is like your sealer has hooks in it. So when you seal it, it has a hook. And when you put your base coat on it, that base coat also has a hook. And those hooks, they kind of like go together. I can't do it on this. I'm trying to hold all this stuff. But it has a hook on each end, and those hooks grab each other. And that's what gets, your adhesion properties from your sealer and your base coat to stick to each other. So you have to seal your stuff. I see guys all the time not sealing anything, and I'm just like, ooh, that's not going to last very long, or whatever the issues. Those guys are the ones that always have the issues with their peeling or delamination or body color issues, or they're trying to blend, they can't get the color correctly. It's like, dude, you have to seal your stuff. You just have to do it. There's no way around it. But yeah, I live and die by the sealer rule. I don't care what anybody else says. It's just, you have to do it. I've been doing this stuff long enough, and I've done things differently, and I've had issues. And just the time that it takes to fix those issues with peeling paint or whatever delamination issues you might have, if you don't do it a correct way, it's not worth the time you're going to take to fix it. You might as well just bite the bullet, get the right stuff, do it the right way, and just move down the line in the right steps. And then, yeah, you're ready for your base coat, and then you're ready for your clear. Everything else after that is pretty simple. So, but yeah, that is my steps on doing this stuff. Is you have to do the steps correctly. So try this out, try this method out, see what happens, see if you like it better, if you're doing it the other way. But this is my cheat sheet, let's call it, to painting chrome pieces, plastic chrome, whatever you want to call it, pop chrome, because there is no other really good way around it. I've done the etch primer. Etch primer does work if you do a good etch, but it's like, man, you almost want to do etch and then epoxy it, or vice versa. You know, you always want to have epoxy down. That is like the best thing out of any chemical product you can actually use to have something to stick to. But I've done etch; it's all right. But this epoxy method is just it's the ultimate best way to do this stuff and not have any issues down the road. So it's a little bit of advice from me to you, tips, a little bit of tricks to make your life easier. So you now can go and paint chrome parts and pieces if you really wanted to, because I just gave you the cheat sheet. I've helped people out locally, like painters locally, understand how to do this. And like I said, some guys get it, some guys don't. They want to cut corners, and then it causes issues with what they're doing, and they don't want to do it fully the correct way. And it's just like, man, why I was like, why am I going to bother trying to help other people out if you guys aren't going to listen? So this is my full video on explaining how to paint chrome pieces, whether it's fake chrome, plastic chrome, whatever it is. This is your cheat sheet to do so. So do with that information as you will, and I'm going to get to spraying this stuff, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.